Alrighty, we're back.
Here we
Not much,
are.
not much has happened since the last time we did one of these, right?
Feels like we say that every week.
It's the same. Yeah, nothing happens. I mean, it's just a boring off season. Or, well, I guess technically not the off season, but
Bowl season.
bowl season for sure. Transfer portal season.
Transfer portal sucks, but we can get into that a little bit later.
I wouldn't say the transfer portal sucks. I mean, OU does stand to benefit at times too. Right?
Yes, we do have 3 guys from the portal so far.
And they're
Which we'll
all
also
pretty
talk
good.
about. Yeah, they're pretty good. But, how about tampering sucks? The NCAA sucks.
Yes. Before we start talking about OU stuff, I have to lead off with this. How about those Dolphins last night? An elite football program that knows when it's December, when it's playoff and winning time, they know how to put it all together, don't they, Brandon? I got to ask for your opinion and thoughts on those Super Bowl and Dolphins.
I was hot last night about the Dolphins. I was
You
raging. I was raging to anybody who would listen, or even if they weren't listening, I was still just sending off rage texts because the Dolphins are inventing new ways to lose. It's remarkable how they are imploding because last night Tennessee literally tried to say, "Please win." Like we don't want we want the best possible draft pick we can get. You guys are you're trying to get a 1 seed. We'll help you out. And they turned the ball over inside their own 10-yard line. Back to back, possessions. One was a punt, so it's a muff punt, and then one was a bad pitch play, and Miami recovered. They turned them both into touchdowns. 14-point lead with 3 minutes to go. Did you see the stat?
Yes, 0 and 767.
Prior to that game, teams in Miami situation since 2016 have been 767-0.
Yeah.
They are inventing new ways to lose, and I fully expect this team to go 9-8. It's what's going to happen. It's what they do.
And Jimmy, I'm sorry. I know it's not funny, but it is funny to me because the way that Brandon talks and thinks this team's a Super Bowl.
Because they do it every year. They get your hopes so high. Like last year, they started 8-3. We're like, maybe we're good again. We're there, and then they lose 5 in a row, and they finished 9-8 to sneak in. This year they got to 9-3, so they're hoping that they can just lose out, and again 9-8 gets them in. But we'll see. They're gonna go 9-8. That's what they do.
The worst spot.
Dolphins do.
The worst spot in the NFL, right around 500.
I hate that I love them.
It's tough. But I got to throw this in here in the very beginning. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. I will say, since our last live, we were below 6,100. We are surpassed that by a good margin. We are, what are we? We are 64 subscribers away from 6,200. That is the new goal. Let's see where we can get tonight. So if you're new here, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below.
And buy a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah, and buy a t-shirt.
The gift giving holiday right around the corner.
It is. Yeah, you can gift it to someone else, and then once we hit 100 t-shirt sales, there will be a signed Brent Venables football given away to one of the t-shirt buyers, and that football will be supplied by our t-shirt guy, Sammy T-shirts. So we appreciate him for that.
Baby.
So
do we want to get to the hot topic?
Start? Yeah, I mean
it's what people want to talk about, want to listen to right now. Cayden Green. I mean, what a surprise! And we'll talk about the additions probably a little bit later, because right before Cayden Green and the Hayes Fawcett post comes out that he's planning on entering the portal, we added the best wide receiver in the portal. So, I mean, you saw a lot of those tweets. The portal giveth and taketh away. But this one's not one that OU or anyone really expected, especially after the ending he had to his freshman season.
It's garbage, is what it is. It sucks. It's like it seemed like it was going to be a really fun live stream. You know what I mean? You get Danny Stutzman coming back, kind of surprising everybody with that cool video. That was awesome. Then yeah, you land Deion Burks out of the portal, who is the best transfer receiver in the portal. You're starting to feel really good about what's happening, and then just some blatant tampering is going on there. That's the only thing that makes sense. This dude was tweeting last week, welcoming guys like Spencer Brown to the team and welcoming. I think it was just Spencer Brown, but he said, like, welcome aboard or something. Like, he was all excited. He was a captain for the last game of the season. He started multiple games, looked really good for OU. Seemed like he was all in. He was tweeting about how burnt orange and the other orange is both horrible colors that make him want to throw up and all that stuff. He seemed like a big program guy, and I wonder what someone is paying him and how they pulled that off illegally.
I'll say.
Just say what it
Obviously,
is.
we haven't talked to Cayden ourselves. He friend of the show. He has been on our show. We have not tried to talk to him since this development. On the outside looking in, it doesn't look good. Like you said, Brandon. He's tweeting like, welcome to the squad, all this stuff. I don't know. It just there must be some sort of way that he has found out that there might be a school or a program willing to meet some demands that maybe he is not getting at OU.
Is that legal?
I would bet anything it's that fat guy that got Pride to Mizzou, Carl.
I don't think he's going to Colorado, Jimmy, or
Yeah, I'm with you, bro. I get why people or think, honestly, Colorado, what they're doing with their offensive line I believe at this point has a very little to do with Phil Loadholt, and more so that prime effect. Maybe next cycle it's more so on Loadholt, but how much did Loadholt really do for Oklahoma and recruiting?
Yeah, and now Mez brought up a good point. Cayden Green is being kind on the Twitter sphere, so he doesn't, he won't draw attention. And that very well could be possible. And, obviously you only show social media what you want to show. But it just didn't seem like that. When we talked to him, a year ago or whenever we did, it's year plus, he was locked in. He was 100% sold. He was born in the state of Oklahoma. He was pumped. He was recruiting kids as much as he could to OU in the class. Was excited to go play for Coach B. A guy that seemed like as much of a program guy you could ever think of, and he wasn't like a nonsense guy. It wasn't a wild recruitment. And then now it seems like he's just gone zero dark 30, as Jose's favorite basketball player claims he does in the playoffs, and is not talking to anyone. And it just seems bizarre. Like, if you're gonna go and transfer, that's fine, but you kind of have to be man enough to own up to it and have a conversation and face the music, basically. I personally think he's gone no matter what at this point. I don't think OU's going to take him back. If he's really
ducking the coaches and stuff, or trying to get a hold of him and stuff, if that report is true, I don't think that if he comes running back that they'll be like, oh yeah, come on back. But who knows? It's going to be interesting.
And one thing that, obviously I think we all believe it is all due to NIL, which is probably true given how it went down. No one having any clue that this was happening. So Matt Rule was on Pat McAfee show earlier, and he brought up a good point. The way that NIL is structured right now with the NCAA, the coaches have zero control of how much money or what these kids do. They don't sign contracts, So there's zero things holding them to actually do something for that money. They're basically just on the team and they get paid by a collective that is that like the school says, hey, this is the one we roll with, but they don't have control on who gets how much money. It's just a random group of people that ultimately decide what money goes to whom. Which, whatever your thoughts on NIL are at this point, like Venables and Coach B can't do anything about how much money gets offered to Cayden Green if that's the case. It's just that
NIL
makes it hard for them to figure it out.
NIL is a great idea, and we were all for it at first. I mean, I'm not like 100% saying I'm against NIL, but this could not have been what the intent of NIL was when it was first, passed and first became a thing, because it's literally NFL free agency every single winter for college athletes now. And it's ridiculous. Like it's wild.
But so, and Mez is commenting, talking about playing guard. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think he was recruited to OU to play guard. And he played left guard because Savion Byrd couldn't emerge and really be consistent. And he filled a role. I think he was going to be given an opportunity to compete for one of the tackle positions. I mean, you've got Jacob Sexton there, but then you also would have who's the transfer we just brought in?
Spencer Brown.
Yeah, Spencer Brown there, obviously. But I think he would have been given an opportunity to compete because for all the other offensive linemen, if you're Cayden, are gone from last year, starters. So pretty much in my mind, and I would think in his mind, every position is open. I think he just filled a role, filled a need that Oklahoma needed. I don't think he was going to be forced to play guard. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe he would have played next year, but Spencer Brown would have graduated and moved on. Maybe he did feel stuck at guard. I just have a hard time believing that you become you're playing 7 games as a true freshman. You're a team captain as a true freshman for a game, and then you feel like you're stuck whenever 4 out of every other offensive lineman's gone now. I just don't see how you would feel stuck. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm speculating. I don't know. But how could you feel stuck? I don't think a starting position has already been awarded to Jacob Sexton and Spencer Brown, because Caleb Schaefer came in and transferred last offseason, and we thought that he might be able to start. He didn't play much.
Green got that spot.
Yeah. So that's my argument, and I might be totally wrong, but that's my thought.
Well, and to either the joy of some people or frustration for others, this does put a big spotlight on Coach B, because the one thing that he does do really well, and I think the 3 of us would agree, is he develops guys. But on the recruiting front, I think you can make an argument that he's the worst recruiter when you look at the staff as a whole. You don't really get your splashy names. You'll get, Cayden Green was the best one out of the last few years, and now Cayden is looking to be gone. So as much as Coach B does do a really good job of putting guys in a position to be in the NFL, while they're in college, it's a lot of third and fourth year guys. And with how the portal and NIL are now, you got to recruit like the other coaches are, which is you'll compete as soon as you come in. You'll get an opportunity to play on the line as a tackle, as a guard, whatever. Obviously that position's a little bit different than others because you have a group of guys, and at some point you're going to need someone to rotate just because of injuries. Either you got to move a right tackle to left tackle so that a guard can slide out to tackle, then insert a guy that kind of plays a swing position. And you see it in the NFL all the time. I mean, the Dolphins, I know we were talking about them because they shit the bed last night, but they're having to kind of mix and mash their offensive line right now. They have 3 or 4 guys that are out. Now they're just having to slot in people as that are healthy enough to, and their best ones are just kind of moving around. So what happens, but now it is weird. I think you're spot on with that, bro. I don't think he was pigeonholed into playing either guard spot, especially when he was recruited to be a left tackle for Oklahoma.
And to some degree, and I understand you can claim that, Coach B is the worst recruiter. But I'll tell you what, along the trenches, that's where a lot of money outside of quarterback is being thrown. There are a million talented wide receivers. Now, obviously, there's different echelons and different levels of elite wide receivers. You've got the Marvin Harrison Juniors of the world, and that elite level. But
and then everybody else,
pretty much. But it's yeah. But when you look at like the offensive line and the defensive line, those are the hardest guys to get because they are so crucial to winning a program, be a winning program. You have to win. You win and lose in the trenches, just like, our whole point of our whole name is Two Plane Sports. We need two planes because we're such a large team, so many large humans. And a lot of teams have figured it out. And that's where all the NIL is being funded outside of a quarterback. If you have a quarterback and an offensive line and a defensive line, you can win a lot of football games. And so, to some degree, Coach B is a little bit handcuffed to who we're willing to play with. I mean, Jordan Seaton was all NIL, and we could have been in that if we were willing to, whatever the number was, to play there, and we weren't. So I think he's a little handcuffed. And then potentially one of his best offensive linemen gets tampered with and then is getting a bag dropped off for him. What are you supposed
likely
to do?
Gets tampered with.
I mean,
there's some shady shit going on in college football.
No, I understand, but what I'm getting at is you can say Coach B is the worst recruiter, but I think he's recruiting at a position group that is at a premium that OU might not be willing to pay or play at that level for those 5-star guys consistently.
I bet that changes next cycle because we kind of saw it in the 20 when you look at 23 versus 24. Not saying that the guys in the 24 class are NIL driven, but you can tell there's a difference in how well Oklahoma has done between defensive line recruiting in the previous cycle versus the current cycle. Last year, who did we get along the defensive line? Marcus Strong, PJ,
and the guy out of Kissimmee, Florida, that's gone.
Derek LeBlanc. You got 3 guys. With your biggest name being PJ, and he was kind of someone that emerged to become a big name. He wasn't a guy like a David Stone or a Hicks, where they were big names throughout their careers in high school. He became that guy. So that was more of you scouted perfectly to figure out what he could be. In 2024, you're going after those big name guys, and you've landed them. Probably because Oklahoma has done, like you said, focus more on NIL in the trenches on the defensive line. But next year, we see that reverse. While they're still going to focus on defensive line, you're probably going to see Oklahoma fully buy into that offensive line room. Because even though they'll probably recover, I don't really doubt that with Coach B in the transfer portal and Coach Venables and even the other guys, Valai, DeMarco, Brandon Hall, they don't just recruit their own positions. They kind of recruit areas. So if they're going to go after specific people, you're going to see other coaches get involved to try to help build those relationships. They're going to find guys to kind of patch up this offensive line for next year. But for next recruiting cycle, we're probably going to see a lot more NIL start being kind of mixed in here with the offensive line recruits.
Yeah, and I will say, I know the stars don't jump off the page, but at the end of the day, also, I think a lot of these recruiting services don't know what they're evaluating when they are, assigning 3, 4, and 5 stars to these offensive linemen. They're good at wide receivers. They're good at, skill positions. There are plenty of cases to state that outside of the, elite, top 3 or 4 players along the offensive line that they rate, there's not much difference between the number 7 offensive tackle and the number 15 offensive tackle in these recruiting sites. And so I think that's why you see Coach B identify these guys that are 3 stars and people are underwhelmed when they come in, and then all of a sudden, holy cow, they're competing and playing year 2. So I don't necessarily get too concerned about when you aren't winning the landing the big fish and winning the recruiting cycle because you landed a 5-star. You're wasting your money if you're just recruiting 5 stars. And OU, I mean, they put together a solid offensive line class, and in this 2024, commitment class, you've got Isaiah Autry, Eugene Brooks is rated very high. He's the number 6 interior offensive lineman in the class. And then you've got Akinkunmi, the number 1 player in Europe, right?
The Oklahoma guy, Joshua Isosa.
You've got Josh Isosa. I know
with the
he's
potential
a little
of
underrated.
adding EPL.
Yeah, and then you've got Eddie Pierre-Louis. And he's committing Friday, I want to say. Is it the 15th? 15th Friday?
Yeah. It's this week.
Yeah.
I know that for sure. I'll have to double check his
So when you look at that, Oklahoma, you want to talk about landing a big fish. Eddie Pierre-Louis on Rivals is like the number 30-something player overall. So I don't put this on Coach B, and I think
it's going to be interesting to see how they patch up the offensive line going forward now, though. I mean, you are replacing the entire offensive line pretty much. Jacob Sexton has had a little bit of time in there, but it's going to be a brand new offensive line.
I mean, I guess my argument would be what difference is it? I mean, how much of a difference is it going to be between 4 guys and 5 guys?
I feel
pretty much
Cayden Green would have been a good guy to anchor it with.
Oh, he would have.
I mean, we're gonna need guys like Heath Ozida, friend of the show, Joshua Bates, friend of the show, both Jakes. It's Spencer Brown.
Well, I think we have an idea of what that offensive line is gonna look like, and we're at 100 viewers. Shout out to you guys. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. Share the stream so we can keep growing. But we have an idea roughly of what next year's line will look like. Assuming Joshua Bates has developed throughout this year, he's probably going to take over at that center spot, and that was going to happen regardless of what Cayden's staying or going. Jake Taylor probably going to play one of those guard positions. He's the most experienced, and he's had injury problems is what's keeping him from playing, but he's played some. Spencer Brown, we've mentioned him a couple times, probably going to end up playing right tackle since that's a spot that he has played his entire time at Michigan. And then Sexton playing left tackle, which he played a few games last year, and he looked good. He came in for Walter Rouse, and when Rouse was struggling, and he looked fine. And then you have Troy Everett, which is kind of like a Robert Conjol, where he kind of plays anywhere in the interior of that offensive line as he's needed. That plug-and-play guy that OU has been looking for is going to be Everett, and maybe he'll play a little bit of center to start the year. I just believe Joshua Bates is going to be the guy to kind of get most of those snaps.
I'd still like to see him add a couple guys in the portal.
They're not done in the portal. I would imagine they're going to bring 2 guys in. Gino Vandemark from Michigan State is a guy that I think Oklahoma's got a good shot with Spencer Brown being on the team. And now with this Cayden Green situation, they might really start pressing a few more guys than they might not have originally.
I can't remember the Georgia guy that entered the portal today. He's a guard, if I remember correctly. And then Chase Basantis, I think is how you say his name, from A&M. Oklahoma was recruiting him pretty hard, if I remember correctly, during his cycle. Obviously, he picked A&M, but It's not a guy that's unfamiliar with Coach B and Norman. So another guy they're probably going to start pressing a little bit harder on if, in fact, they don't plan on trying to bring Cayden Green back, which I think that would be weird, given that everything that's been reported today on Twitter, or the app formerly known as Twitter, has been that not even the players had an idea that he was leaving. McCade Mettauer was quoted as saying, "I thought he was at his finals because it is finals week at OU, so they just thought he was gone for that." And then after the post practice, like when presses gets those players, that news was broken to him, and he was caught off guard. Shout out Tanya for the super sticker.
I appreciate it, Tanya. Yeah, it just, if everything that's being reported is true, you can't take him back.
I guess Hose is done with us, bro.
Yeah, no, I think so. I just don't think you can take him back. I mean, it's just the way that apparently it's been handled. You just can't. So,
I agree. Did you see the some pretty interesting tweets after his announcement?
what tweets are you talking about?
So Daniel Akinkunmi retweeted, and I posted about it a couple hours before, or maybe an hour before we hopped on. Said about how he's coming to make it to the NFL, not to make millions of dollars in college, which that's sounds like a shot at Cayden Green if you ask me. And then Kamari Moore, our commit, quote tweeted it, the transfer portal announcement with the eyeballs. So I feel like I was telling Hose earlier, and this might just be ridiculous, but I'm like, doomsday scenario in this thing. Kamari Moore might leave because it looked like that way with his, and he's never played. He's just a commitment at this point, but he might leave. I'm terrified that PJ follows too, and they just get all the Missouri guys. Is that ridiculous? Hose said it might be ridiculous. I don't think it's ridiculous. Kamari Moore seems like he's on board with this just by the eyeball tweet.
On the eyeball,
he quote tweeted the Hayes Fawcett tweet that that said offensive lineman Cayden Green to the portal. He quoted that with the eyeballs. Kamari Moore did.
Well,
I feel like PJ could be next too, and Hose was kind of coming out here for that earlier, but I don't think it'd be ridiculous. I really don't.
Okay. So on Kamari Moore, he was quote tweeted by an OU fan that the OU fan said loyalty doesn't exist anymore. And I guess he was caught off guard. I think Kamari, it was more so of a reaction. Just like everyone that was currently on the team no one expected Cayden to leave.
That's good.
Not that
Mizzou, I didn't see that.
Yeah, not that Mizzou obviously can't, because they will do everything they can to build that border around their in-state guys and make it basically impossible for them to say no to him. But I think at this point, Kamari's just as locked in as when he committed, because he was second? Was he first or second 2025 commit? I don't remember. But he was one of the early ones.
Yeah. I think he's
And then
first.
With PJ, I do think that's ridiculous, because he is, at the end of his recruiting cycle, he was a 5-star defensive lineman. You don't think A&M and Alabama and every other top-tier program was trying to throw cash at him? I think PJ is probably the least of our worries right now in leaving, especially because Bates and Chavis have been known to be the best at creating those relationships in the recruiting process and after the fact.
I would like to think that OU is taking care of PJ right now and has taken care of him enough to make him not look elsewhere. I would hope. But again, I don't know. I agree with you, Hose. I mean, at the end of the day, he was a 5-star before he signed, and you would think everyone was going to go after him as is. And I mean, if you didn't take it then, why would you take it now? It's not like you put together a banner season so your offer went up millions.
I hope he doesn't leave. That dude's gonna be a freak, and that was just me being doing. It's been a rough stretch of football. When you think of things, the Dolphins imploding, and then Cayden Green just jumping ship. I'm thinking the worst. But I do think, and we were texting about this earlier too. If this team can figure out how to play offensive line next year at a high level, I don't care which 5 is out there. It doesn't matter. If they can play offensive line at a high level, if they can protect Jackson Arnold, and if they can create some holes for those running backs, I think it's the most talented offense that we've had since the Baker Mayfield days. If you look at the skill positions, the running backs, obviously I think you'd like to get a tight end because there's not really a great tight end there. I think Devon Mitchell's going to be great, but he's young. If this team can play offensive line next year, I think the sky's the limit for the offense.
I'm not going to argue with that. Really, I think you have to have the tight end position taken care of. And I think the tight end position will be taken care of, whoever that might be. There's a few guys, and we can talk a little bit more, but if you can take care of a tight end and have a pass-catching tight end that can contribute, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. Because you look at that offensive line or offensive, that wide receiver room, I mean, we might as well start there and talk about the positive of the transfer portal today for Oklahoma is Deion Burks from Purdue.
Huge.
Deion, OU, this is just like gravy for them at this point. This wasn't like you have to go get some one-type player. The offensive line, the wide receiver room is depleted. You're losing Drake Stoops, which is unfortunate, of course. I mean, we all love Stoops. But you had guys that were there and would contribute next year. But you go out and you get a guy like Deion Burks, who's coming from Purdue, who has not been a good football program. He is the best wide receiver that Purdue had on the field, and he is a natural slot wide receiver that didn't have the luxury of playing the slot position very much at all at Purdue because he had to do everything because he was the best that they had. And now you get to bring him to Norman in an offense that he can play the slot, and that's all he needs to play because you've got players on the outside of you. I mean, you've got Andrew Anthony, Jalil Farouk, Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, all on the outside.
That's what I'm saying, dude. This is the most talented receiving core we've seen since Baker Mayfield's days.
Yeah, and you can come in and literally just play the slot, and that's all that matters for you. Deion Burks, all you have to do is get the ball in his hands and get him in open space. He's a burner. I've watched a few of his games last year, just watching Purdue football whenever they play in the Big Ten. He's electric, and you just have to get the ball in his hands. And I think Jackson Arnold's going to learn to really like him quite a bit.
Well, and one thing that quarterbacks in the NFL talk about all the time when they're looking for their guy, when they're having to reset their wide receiver room, is how there's a difference in the confidence they get with the guys, because they'll be body catchers versus hand catchers. And Burks, it's not my computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad. Burks seems to be, when you're watching his highlights, he definitely goes up with the ball for his hands. He doesn't try to give himself any assistance with his chest. That dude is very talented, and he's hard to bring down. Again, that's something you'll easily notice in his highlights. He is not an easy tackle for any defender, so just get him in an open field against a defensive back, and he will make someone miss. And those stats showed like he's improved every year since he was at Purdue. And you would assume that with a better quarterback, more talent around him, he'll probably do the same thing and hit the trajectory and just have a better statistical output at Oklahoma. Whether it's his only year at OU, because he does have 2 years of eligibility. He could be a one and done guy, a rental, where it was beneficial for both. He came here, helped us win more games, gave us another option in the wide receiver room, and then being here gives him a better trajectory for his draft stock. That I don't think that's a bad thing either. I mean, that's kind of where the portal is good for these guys, where a guy like Burks, who is at Purdue, not going to get as much hype as someone like a Drake Stoops potentially, because he went to a Power 5 program. He gets to be in a spot where he'll go from like a 4th or 5th round pick to potentially a 2nd or 3rd, depending on how next year goes.
And Mez mentioned Anthony won't be ready by the fall.
Unless you're a doctor, I don't think that's been actually. I'm pretty sure that's already been expected. He'll be ready.
I mean, and anymore. I mean, he got hurt in October, and a lot of times, whatever it ended up being exactly. I mean, he had surgery in October, so you would think close, around 10 months, he'll be pretty darn close. And keep Burks on the outside. I mean, honestly, when you look at the outside, why wouldn't you play him on the inside? You got so much talent on the outside. I don't understand why you wouldn't play him there. And I don't know about 12 months, man. I mean, you're watching a lot of NFL players and a lot of college players that are coming back from ACLs and everything in 10. So, but anyway.
And sometimes even faster, at least to start practicing.
Yeah.
And then another guy we added is Des Malone from San Diego
That was
State.
A position of need, because remember you mentioned with Deion Burks, that was kind of just gravy. It's fun to get a guy like that, especially when he was close with Texas, close with Ole Miss, stuff like that. So to steal him from our conference rivals, conference opponents was nice. But Des Malone, that is a position of need. That one was big time good. I think with the 3 additions we've had in the portal, they've done a great job. It does suck to lose Cayden Green, but this is some. I think you titled it positive portal news, Hose, when you put the graphic up first. They've got some dudes in the portal coming our way, which is the sky's not totally falling.
And I would argue that I would think they would need to take one more corner if they could. Just because I'm a little nervous that, I mean, I hope Gentry Williams can make it through the season healthy. But unfortunately, it's just not gone his way quite yet. And maybe an off season, and he might be good next year, and no concern. But I don't know if OU will take another corner, but I feel like it wouldn't be a bad idea to do so.
No, it wouldn't. I'd agree with that. And then some D-line do too. D-line, O-line, one more corner.
Yeah, you've got a lot of talented defensive backs that are young on your team. But whether they'll actually contribute, I don't
know. Who just said it in the chat here? Lloyd here mentioned, as of 6 minutes ago, I have not looked at my phone. Marvin Jones Jr., I think he was a fringe 5-star. I know he was a highly rated 4-star in the 2022 class. Committed to Georgia. Oklahoma was recruiting him hard. I think Oklahoma was in his at least final 3. It just hit the transfer portal.
Oklahoma was going to be the landing spot until Lincoln Riley and the squad dipped out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the current staff will take a look at him? Because if you looked at Hayes Fawcett posted, I think probably 20, 30 minutes before we went on live, he posted like the 20 or 25 schools, whatever, that have hit up Raleek Brown. Oklahoma is not one of those schools. That was a previous staff guy. I wonder if Jones Jr. is a previous staff guy as well.
Yeah, well, and I guess the only thing you could argue with why they're not talking to Raleek Brown is because he was still committed. I can't remember the exact time. He was still committed to OU when Brent Venables was hired, right? Or was that before? Was that
he jumped ship with like Brandon Ennis and Luke Haas and all them?
Yeah, I mean, probably could argue that you were committed, and you jump ship that fast, go follow your boy, you're out. You're not a program guy. I guess Marvin could be that he never actually committed, and so he was never totally all in. I don't know. Maybe he's
Defensive line
talented.
help. Yeah. I don't know what
We
he
have
was-
offered Chris McClellan, correct? I mean,
Yes.
I'm making that up. Yeah, and he was a previous staff guy, so.
Yeah, but again, never actually committed, right?
Mhm.
He was also this staff guy because that like tail end where they were trying to make sure Gentry Williams didn't go to either USC or Florida. McClellan was there at the same time. He just ended up picking Florida, which obviously didn't seem like the right choice 2 years later.
I don't know. I don't know if Marvin Jones, Jr. hit the portal. If he did, must have literally just happened.
Lloyd's
Yeah,
breaking
like,
news on Two Plane Sports.
I Googled it when Lloyd put it on here. It was literally the article on Sports Illustrated as of 6 minutes ago.
Okay.
Is that the first time breaking news has occurred on Two Plane Sports live stream?
At least that we looked at, that's for sure.
Appreciate you, Lloyd. Good looks.
Yeah.
I wonder I don't know that they would take another corner, though. At least.
Why would you not? Because like Brum mentioned it, I think Gentry Williams is a great player, but he is a guy that you have to worry about with injury situations.
Yeah, but you have Kendall Dolby, who would be.
He looks solid.
Yeah, he was good. Probably going to play a little bit more next year. If they trust Kenai Walker more, he'll probably still be in the rotation. Then you assume those guys like Makari Vickers and Josiah Wagner and Jacoby Johnson, who is an elite athlete.
No, he's an elite athlete.
Yeah, he'll probably get some run in there, especially early on in the season. If he gets when he gets opportunities, might be able to.
What about Josiah Wagner? He looked pretty solid in the limited roles he got last season too.
I think Gentry's definitely your biggest question mark. He's the best and has the potential to be first, second round guy, but those injuries seems like every time he makes a tackle, like he messes up his shoulder, and it could just be like a lingering injury that just kind of forced him out every game.
Yeah, and honestly, they probably won't take another corner. It's one of those deals of, potentially. I guess the only other one that you could think that OU would take is the kid from Utah, Jocelyn Malaska.
Mm-hmm. He's from Tulsa.
That's the only guy I would think that OU would take now. In addition, it'd be nice to get him, but it's not the end of the world if OU doesn't get someone. They had to get at least one, and they got one, and one that's talented and that can basically fill Woody Washington's role. And so,
if Andrew Makuba commits to us, do you think he's going to play the cheetah?
No, I kind of would think so. He would at least get a run there.
That or safety.
Because he'd have to beat out Justin Harrington, right? If he were to commit, because I assume Harrington's going to be in the running for that cheetah spot too.
Yeah.
If he gets that medical red shirt,
he should. I hope so.
I think, and when we kind of talked about it in our text messages when it was announced Makuba was taking a visit to Oklahoma. To me, going after him never really meant Billy was going to leave for the NFL. It seems like they're preparing for Harrington not getting that redshirt exception. Because you do need that second cheetah. And Peyton Bowen is likely still going to play. He'll play more like behind Billy Bowman whenever they give him like a series to rest. Because that's kind of his natural position. Guy that's going to ball hawk and take and create turnovers like Billy does. So we'll see, but it seems like Dason's probably still the guy that you would assume gets that starting spot at Cheetah, and then Makuba is the guy for more pass heavy offenses, where like Justin was last year, where they're going to throw him back at safety more often than not.
I still don't think that he ultimately ends up in Oklahoma. I hope he does, of course. I get the connections between OU and him and, Venables being at Clemson and whatnot, but it just seems like he's going to be a Longhorn, unfortunately.
Well, it also felt like Deion Burks was going to be a Longhorn.
I don't know. Did it ever feel like that? I always felt like it was.
He said he was talking to Texas and Ole Miss the most outside of us, but I like to I like to paint a picture that we stole him from Texas.
We did. It was down to OU in Texas. He was supposed to take a visit next week to Texas.
Boom.
I mean, yeah. It's between us and Texas. I don't know. I mean,
one thing that doesn't get talked about, and this is just general college football, Ole Miss seems to be like the landing spot for just transfers. I don't know if Lane Kiffin does a lot of recruiting out of high school, but damn, does he get those transfer guys. Got the number 1 linebacker. Think he's about to probably get a couple more guys.
He's all over Twitter posting where his jet's landing with pictures and everything else. I mean, he is all over the place.
I feel like Lane Kiffin would be a fun guy to play for, especially if you're an older guy who's a little more.
Oh, I don't
know. I think it'd be fun to play for no matter what. But I can see why these transfer kids can be like, hey, that looks kind of fun.
Oh, I agree. I think Lane Kiffin has lightened up quite a bit, figured it out after his few coaching stops and disasters.
If I remember correctly, Brum was a big Kiffin, Oklahoma guy during the coaching search post-Lincoln.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense. I'm not upset with where Oklahoma went at all, but
it would have been an interesting situation.
It just feels like if we were to hire Lane Kiffin after Lincoln Riley, it would have been like running the same type of thing, just a offensive-minded head coach thing. Yeah. I like that we went a different route.
Yeah, but we're north of 120 viewers right now. If you're new here, be sure to like the video and subscribe. We're 63 subscribers away from 6,200, so help us out. Hit the subscribe button, and then follow us on all our socials: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, TikTok. Link down below.
What else? Who else did we talked about? Spencer Brown last week. One thing we haven't talked about is the return of both Stutzman and Billy Bowman.
How cool was that Danny Stutzman video? That dude kills social media.
It was pretty darn cool.
And then did you see his tweet today where he said something about like, I'm a Corvette because I don't see no challengers or something? He's clever with his captions.
Oh yeah, I mean, it seemed like he was all but gone, and then Venables put the all-out press on him.
Dude, that was I don't know how much you guys were on Twitter that day, but the drama between all the OU insiders was hilarious to watch.
I saw you tweet about it on our page, but yeah, I didn't really follow it. I didn't know what was going on between who and whatever.
Yeah, just the back and forth on people's ethics and who reported what first.
Did you see what Jaron Kanik tweeted about him leaving? And Jaron Kanik and Danny Stutzman are like boys, but he posted, I'm sure you guys have seen that video of Jayden Daniels when he was leaving Arizona State, how all his teammates were like, this dude sucks, get him out of here, it doesn't matter anyway. Then it was Jayden Daniels' locker. He had the exact same video, and it was like a crappy Photoshop. It just said Stutzman instead of Jayden Daniels, and it was just saying,
I
this guy sucks anyway, get him out of here. I thought it was hilarious. Those dudes are fun.
But back to Stutzman, I think that is going to make life next year so much easier, and the transition after he does leave to the NFL, because apparently, like, most people see him as a guy that should have been at least a Butkus Award finalist or a semifinalist. Like, the fact that he wasn't on either of those lists is ridiculous, but his floor has been set from what's been reported with his draft grade. So he feels like there's only gaining. It seems very much feels like a Baker Mayfield situation. This is really as low as you're going to go, regardless of what happens next year, and then you've only got more to gain.
I'd agree.
And OU fans have been looking for the next Boz. It's him. He doesn't have the same hairstyle, but damn, does he have a very similar personality.
He's close to it too. He's got the blonde hair too now.
Mm-hmm.
He's close to, but he 100% has the Boz personality, and then he like solidified it with having Brian Bosworth in his "I'm not leaving" video. Pretty cool. I think it's great for the program overall too, because it gives guys like Kip Lewis, who, Hose, you and I mentioned it when we first did our Stutzman leaving video. I thought Kip Lewis was going to step in and fill that role, and I still think he would have done a great job in that role. But I mean, it doesn't suck to let him sit a little bit more, and maybe not even sit, because I guarantee you Kip Lewis is going to play a lot next season too, even with Stutz coming back. It's good for everybody.
There's a lot. I mean, having him back, yeah, I think Kip, you're going to see him play, and I think you're going to see Kobe McKenzie play some as well. Your depth chart is a lot more solid if you for rotation and all that stuff. And he's the leader of the defense. Just making that transition to the SEC is with him makes it a lot easier. And Billy Bowman. I mean, having both your two anchors of your defense there, and then you bring in, your defensive line is looking better. Hopefully, if you get a Chris McClellan, the interior of the defensive line
Chris
with
McClellan would be fantastic. And I'm sure, I can't remember, or I don't know which one of you guys tweeted it, but the McKinley news about him not making his decision until signing day. Very interesting in that regard. If you can finish this class or this signing day, whatever, if you can get to the signing day with Chris McClellan and somehow get McKinley with the 2023 or with the 2024 guys that are coming in, that's going to be a mean defensive line. This defense as a whole could be really, really good next year.
And don't forget PJ Adebore. And I mean, it's just an R. Mason Thomas. I know he's been a little bit slept on this year. I mean,
does everybody who played a lot last year? I mean, I think they can all come back, right? Like Trace Ford. He didn't necessarily play a lot, but I think he can come back. Yeah, I hope DeJohn Terry comes back. Jacob Lacey, it'd be nice to see him come back.
I don't know if Lacey has another year.
We'll have to check that. But that's the one benefit that Oklahoma has going into the SEC that seems like is being slept on, is a lot of your contributors were very young players at all positions, especially on the defensive line. I mean, you just named him, bro. I'm like, R. Mason Thomas is a guy that just had to deal with a lot of injuries early on in the season. But every single year you hear guys on the team talk about how freaky athletic he is and the bend he has to rush the passer. You expect PJ to play a lot more. Ethan Downs is coming back. Trace Ford I believe does have that another year of eligibility, so he could come back. And then you get all your guys from the 2024 class. Even if they're not heavy contributors, if they just max out their 4 games, each of them, and play here and there to alleviate some of the effort and the amount of plays the other guys have to put in there, the defensive line room is going to be just fine. The defense is going to be just fine.
Jacob Lacey does have another year. Confirmed.
Oh, that's perfect. I mean, yeah, and then you've got Jaden Jackson coming in too. Not that, I expect the true freshmen to contribute a ton, but they very well might come in on a rotational basis. It's this defensive line. You had Chris McClellan, and somehow you pull a rabbit out of the hat with Dominic McKinley. I mean, that would be, even if you just get Chris McClellan and to pair him up with David Stone, I mean, that's great. I would be satisfied with that. But you somehow got Dominic McKinley in this class. I mean, it just would be a plethora of talent coming to Norman.
OU is expected to take their in-home with him on Thursday. So probably in the next couple weeks, if he's going to decommit, it'll probably happen before or during National Signing Day in that time period.
Yeah. And I know everyone's wondering about old David Hicks too, if he'll ever hit the portal. And in the off chance that he does, Oklahoma is going to be knocking on his door, probably the first team to show up. Yeah, I mean, Sean, you're right. I mean, Okoye and Nigel Smith and Jaden Jackson and David Stone. I mean,
it's nice.
And Wyatt Gilmore. I mean, this defensive line haul in this room is amazing. So
I almost forgot about Nigel Smith, but yeah, that's He's a friend of the show. That's embarrassing. That's on me.
He is. So no, I mean
Just got to tamper away.
we're in a really good spot,
There's nothing against it.
but you can't complain. I mean, with where OU's at, the safety room's strong. The cornerback room got a little bit of a reinforcement there. You get Danny Stutzman to have Canick, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie. You're bringing in James Nesta to at least be able to, learn and kind of figure some things out.
If we can figure out how to play offensive line at a high level next year, this team, sky's the limit. That's the one question mark. I agree with Sean. Get 4 more linemen in the portal.
And I fully trust with what Coach B is going to do, and I think we're going to be fine. I think they're going to figure it out. So, can't complain.
There's a lot to be excited about going into the SEC. But I still think the Alamo Bowl is going to be a really fun watch. I know people like to complain about how OU should have been in the New Year's Six Bowl. You got the Alamo
Well, they should have been.
You got the Alamo Bowl. It is what it is. Have a good time with it.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is. It's going to be a good game.
We're going to see a lot of new faces out there. It is.
I don't think Arizona's going to have a lot of opt-outs either, so it's going to be a good test. Arizona's a tough team. It's a fun game.
I mean, for OU, the only ones you'll look at you'll see basically a new offense, completely new offensive line. Your QB1 of the future, Drake Stoops, I believe, is playing, right? Is he playing in the bowl game?
Stoops, yeah, I believe so.
So, I mean, wideouts, maybe they do a little bit more rotation to get the younger guys in. Then defense, you're just going to see what the experience helps them with. Because, yeah, you're right. You're right. Arizona has a very explosive offense, and it's going to be a challenge for the defense for sure.
If you're there, say hi to me and Hose.
We'll be there. All right. Anything else we want to chat about before we wrap it up?
10-2 is a lot better than 6-7. I agree with Jimmy.
That's true.
No,
that is.
And everyone that's watching, we're gonna release another video tomorrow. Talk more recruiting, more in depth, more structured, more
recruiting.
We have more recruiting. We get some comments that people don't want our talking anything other than OU football. I promise this video will be all OU football.
That's a fact.
Yes. Being a nerd is much better than not being a nerd.
True. So.
All right. Good live.